Hey, what's going on everyone? This is RobWillis.info here, and man has it been a minute since I've made a video, and even longer since I've covered my home lab setup. I've been cleaning some things up a bit and starting to think about making some upgrades, so I figured this would be a good time to capture where everything currently stands. Alright, so let's start off with the server rack. You might notice it's a little different than most, and that's because I actually built this one myself. 12 years, 2 moves later, it's still holding up pretty well. The frame is made from sturdy 2x3 lumber, and the sides and back are all made from simple half-inch pine boards. Yeah, you heard that correctly, the entire thing is made out of wood. And before someone in the comments asks, it does not get anywhere near hot enough to be a fire hazard. The entire thing's finished with an ebony stain to give it a nice dark, clean look, and then I coated the top of it with a layer of polyurethane to give it some extra durability. All of the gaps have been sealed or caulked, along with sound deadening material added throughout the inside to help keep as much heat and sound inside. I wanted this to be pretty flexible, so in the front there's a mix of 1U, 2U, and 4U size slots to accommodate different chassis sizes. I mainly use 1 and 2U, but I can fit up to 9 1U chassis. And with the top finished, I'm able to use it just like any other workspace. And that's my 3D printer over to the right there, which, let me tell you, I'm pretty advanced. I can take and combine rectangles and FreeCAD to make some pretty amazing components, like my fan adjuster POC thingy here. And then I've actually got one down in production. You can see that over to the right here. I actually use these to adjust the fans and the exhaust system. And then off to the right here, you can see 2 CyberPower 1500 VA 1000 watt UPSs, and that's powering everything that's in this stack here. And you can see with everything kind of idling right now, it's only pulling about 900 watts with all 6 servers. And back up on top, I have a temperature sensor that records the room temp, along with there's a remote sensor that's inside the server rack there, so I can get temperatures from inside there. And behind all that is the exhaust system. There's 2 8-inch ports on the top here that feed into a single 8-inch duct. And then inside there's 2 powered fans that can be adjusted via that fan controller that I showed earlier. And then everything exhausts directly out the window. The piping is wrapped in sound deadener and blankets to kind of help keep the heat in and the sound, but also clean up the look a little bit. The whole idea here is to keep the hot and cool air separate. Since the servers draw fresh cool air in through the front and exhaust hot air out the rear, I can capture it in the box and exhaust it directly outside. This does create some negative pressure in the house, but after a ton of testing, there is a sweet spot with the fans on low that offers plenty of cooling for the servers with minimal impact and noise. The server fans are on the small side, which leads to them being higher pitched, and they can get really loud when they're spinning at full speed. Since this is also my office, it's a top priority to keep the environment cool but also quiet. With this setup, I can take calls without anyone even realizing there's a whole server stack sitting right there, and the room stays around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, so finally moving on to hardware, the good stuff. There's so many good options out there anymore, but I generally prefer to stick to servers, and for a few reasons. So first up, when talking about servers, you're generally going to be talking about enterprise grade build quality, so they're tough and super reliable. Next up, the hardware is all going to be standardized. This usually translates to great operating system support. Have you ever tried to install a hypervisor like ESXi on a system with a gaming motherboard? This would often lead to a complete failure of the OS to install due to something like an unsupported network adapter. You also get some interesting features like dual hot swappable power supplies. They've got massive storage and memory capacity. Now keep in mind, these servers are all pretty old at this point. The R610s were end of life at like 2011, but they still max out at 192 gigs of RAM. And a lot of these servers also have multiple CPU sockets. 2 and 4 are pretty common. All of these ones have 2. And then they also have out-of-band remote access and management. So we're talking about things like the Dell Remote Access Controller, or DRAC, or old school Rob DRAC, or more generic ones like a Baseboard Management Controller, or BMC. And these give you, we're talking like full VNC style console access with the ability to power the server on from an off state, mount an ISO image, all of that good stuff that you would need to recover a server that's offline. Alright, so let's dive in a little bit more to the specifics of the hardware here. So I've got 4 Dell PowerEdge R610s, and each one of them has 2 Xeon 6-core CPUs, so we got 12 cores per chassis. They've all got at least 48 gig of RAM. There's a mix of SSDs and the old school traditional drives, the HDDs. We got, each one of them has a PERC RAID controller, and then all of these have the Dell Remote Access Controller for remote management as well. And then below that, there's 2 Dell PowerEdge C2100s, and each one of those has 2 Xeon 6-core CPUs, so 12 cores per chassis there too. These all have at least 72 gigs of RAM, and then there's 12 bays on these bad boys, so we've got a mix of drives, so SSDs, HDDs. There's a bunch of 8 terabyte drives in these ones. And then they have H700 RAID controllers instead of the perks. And they also have the baseboard management controller, so no Drax here, just the basic BMC. All of these servers were picked up for about $200-300 a piece, and then built up from there. So hard drives, memory, a lot of that stuff was added later on, and they're all running VMware ESXi right now. But I'll most likely be migrating to Proxmox in the near future. And the R610s, I purchased them in, or I think it was around 2019, and then the C2100s were both purchased a few years before that, and they've been running 24/7, 365 since then. One of the nice things about this setup is, since I own this hardware now, I don't have to worry about any monthly bills like with cloud services or anything like that. Well, other than electricity, of course. So I'm running these in 3 pairs for redundancy, with each pair hosting specific functions. Pair 1 is more my network infrastructure, with a pair of OPNsense firewalls that are running in high availability mode, along with a few Pi holes and some other network related services. Pair 2 is a dedicated isolated lab environment. This is where I do the majority of my fun stuff, the testing, building, research, development, anything like that usually goes down in this pair. And then pair 3 is my media and storage. One server acts as the primary, while the other one acts as a full backup. I used to focus on a lot more operations or systems engineering type work, but I mostly focus on security engineering nowadays, which has led to me scaling things down a lot. I want to keep this video on the shorter side, but maybe I'll do a follow-up video talking a little bit more in depth about what I'm doing with all this and do I even really need it. Let me know in the comments if that sounds like something that would be interesting to you. Alright, so let's get this bad boy opened up and take a look around the back here and see what I got going on. So you'll notice as I go along the side here, I've got these little hook and eye loops, and that's just to secure the back box to the server rack. And then there's also a wooden dowel in there that has a matching guide hole on the server rack, and that's just to make sure everything lines up and stays nice and tight and sealed when it's all closed up. But yeah, and then looking under here, you can see I've got a Dell Power Connect 48 port gigabit switch, and that's kind of the backbone of my network, along with all this various color-coded cabling. So we've got Drax and LAN traffic, filtered traffic, all that fun kind of stuff. And so over to the left here, that sensor you can see hanging is the remote temperature sensor for the receiver that's on the top of the rack. And there's somewhere that sound deadening paneling installed throughout, and then all of the heat is exhausted up through those 2 8-inch ports. And yeah, it's a super simple setup, but it works really well. So I've experimented with a bunch of random nonsense over the years to help cut down on the noise, and there's one project that really stands out amongst those. Let me present the robwillis.info sound damper. Constructed out of rare and sophisticated materials like cardboard, duct tape, and more of that Amazon sound deadening foam panels, this thing does an amazing job at cutting down on the high frequencies pouring out of the front of the chassis. It also seems to do something with the airflow. The servers seem to run cooler when the damper is in position compared to when it's not. I don't know, maybe like a turbulence thing. It seems like a straightening out the air or something. I don't know. But either way, best $10 mod I've ever made, hands down. And then over to the right here is my main desk with my 3950X build from a few years ago. I love this thing. It's solid. It's still beast. 16 cores, 64 gig of RAM, 2080 Super. I'm also a bit of an audiophile, so there's headphones, DACs, and amps and whatnot scattered throughout. But you'll see there's a Dark Voice tube amp over there, a Modius, a Magnius, Asgard. And then to the right of that is my my workstation. And then to the right of that, down in the corner there, is my little AI PC build. That's a Precision Tower 5810. It's a bit of a monster. It's got a 10-core Xeon in it, 192 gig of RAM, 4060 Ti. I mainly use it to run Llama and OpenWebUI, but love that thing, yeah. And then over to the left here, I've got my speaker set up along with the old record player. So again, a little bit of an audiophile. Alright, so I think that's where I'm going to wrap this one. It's actually been kind of fun getting back into this. Funny, I bought this camera before COVID and haven't used it for a single video, so this is the first one. I also kind of forgot how complicated and time consuming the editing can be, especially with the voiceover stuff, but I feel like finding a little bit of rhythm again. So yeah, hopefully the biggest takeaway from this video though is that building a home lab doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. If you're looking to further yourself in your career or just want to gain the hands-on experience and skills, this is absolutely worth the investment. In a world full of cringy social media and LinkedIn posts, it's time to stop talking about it and start being about it.